911, what is your emergency?
When the 911 safety net breaks, everything can fall apart.
911, is this an emergency?
The baby's drowned.
In Boca Raton, Florida, 14-month-old Brooke Hauser is found floating face down in her backyard pool.
We just got her. What should we do?
All you can do is wait for the rescue. They'll be there real shortly.
But while the ambulance is on the way, the 911 dispatcher doesn't know how to give CPR instructions. The little girl suffers severe brain damage and later dies. In Kentucky, Lillian Coleman and 3 of her children die when their house catches fire. A dispatcher initially sends fire trucks miles away to the wrong town.
Unfortunately, the public misunderstands what 911 is.
Jeffrey Clausen, who has trained dispatchers in major cities around the country, says if competent people aren't answering the calls, 911 is just a phone number.
That's all it means. It doesn't mean that the people that are there know what to do. It doesn't mean that they're trained. They could be abject idiots.
Fire rescue, do you have an emergency?
Since 1968, when the first 911 call was made in Haleyville, Alabama, the system has saved thousands of lives.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye. Boy, that guy's an idiot.
But as you'll see tonight, sometimes the system breaks down. And it starts with the human factor, the 911 dispatcher.
Okay.
Last year, Chicago's Better Government Association took these videos of the 911 night shift. Inside the police nerve center, 4 dispatchers dozing in dreamland. And that wasn't all. The camera found 6 more dispatchers sleeping in another 911 area that handles lower priority calls. In cities such as Houston and Atlanta, more than 95% of emergency calls are answered within 10 seconds. What you're seeing here may be one reason why in Chicago only 62% of calls are handled that fast. When these pictures were broadcast by WMAQ, it was big news. The City Council held a public hearing chaired by Alderman William Beavers, who demanded the 10 sleeping operators be disciplined.
When somebody's beating your behind and you need some help in a hurry, and he's asleep.
But that was more than 6 months ago. And guess what's happened since? How many of those 10 operators have been disciplined?
Not one yet.
Not one?
Not one.
How do you explain that?
I can't explain it. All I have to do is wait for the police department. What they say is they're still investigating.
I didn't like it. You know, what was seen on the tape.
Police Commander Jerry Robinson was put in charge of Chicago's 911 center after the controversy broke. He says it won't happen again, but that union work rules have slowed the disciplinary process. Commander, it's been more than 6 months since that tape came out.
Yes.
What kind of a message do you think it sends? No action has been taken against any of these officers.
It may not be a good message to be sent, but we have to give them every right that they're afforded.
But the most disturbing part of this undercover tape is not the sleeping dispatchers. It's that small light near the top of the screen. A warning that a 911 call has gone unanswered for at least 36 seconds. At least 8 phone rings. Last year, that warning light flashed at Chicago's 911 center more than 61,000 times.
I wouldn't count on 911 again.
Veronica Dale believes her husband was a victim of Chicago's 911 system. Reverend Eric Dale was a 69-year-old minister who served Chicago's Jamaican community. Until one day in 1993 when he collapsed at home with a heart attack at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Family members recall trying to reach 911 again and again.
They didn't respond. Nobody picked up the phone.
They're calling 911 and nobody is answering.
Nobody answering the phone.
Primetime has obtained this internal police record showing that 1,334 times that day, people dialed 911 but hung up before the call was answered. That's 30% more than usual. At 2:49, more than 10 minutes after they say they started calling 911, Reverend Dale's granddaughter finally gets through.
I need the help.
Why do you need the help?
Because my grandfather's having a heart attack and he's dying.
They're on their way, ma'am.
But records show no ambulance is dispatched. Dale's condition is worsening. At 2:52, another call is made.
My grandfather had a heart attack. I need somebody right away.
Where's the set, sir?
38 West 108 Place. Hurry up. He don't got no pulse or nothing.
All right, I'll be there. Watch for the ambulance, okay?
But again, no ambulance is sent. As each minute slips away, so does Reverend Dale's chance for survival. At 2:54, his daughter reaches for the 911 lifeline one last time.
My my father just had a heart attack. And he's laying down. He's not moving.
All right, I'll be there shortly, ma'am. They're on
Hey,
the way.
please hurry up.
Still, despite all those promises from 911 operators, an ambulance isn't dispatched until after that last call is made. Almost a half hour after the Reverend collapsed in his bedroom. Eric Dale dies as a result of his heart attack. But it wasn't just the delay in sending out paramedics that went wrong that day. In Chicago, while you're waiting for the ambulance, you're supposed to get help over the phone. The fire department gives dispatchers these flip cards, which tell them what to do in an emergency, what questions to ask, and what pre-arrival instructions to give while the paramedics are on their way.
You can, in fact, make a difference for the patient.
Mike Cosgrove, a Chicago Fire Department official, says the first thing a dispatcher must do is ask questions, such as, in the case of a heart attack,
How do you know he's having a heart attack? What's happening? What happened to him? Is he on the floor? Where is he?
right, a lot of questions that you'd like to ask.
Few questions, certainly.
What if I told you that there are cases of your dispatchers not asking one of those questions?
I would be very surprised.
So we played the call that Reverend Dale's grandson made to 911.
Hurry up. He don't got no pulse or nothing.
Right, hon, is this a house or an apartment?
A house.
All right, we'll get somebody over there, okay?
Why wouldn't you give pre-arrival instructions in that case?
My guess would be that an attempt should have been made.
Mrs. Dale believes those instructions would have saved her husband's life. He'd still be alive today.
He would still be alive, yes.
We wanted to see if the Dale case was the exception, as Chicago fire officials claim, or the rule. So we conducted our own experiment. And what we found should trouble anyone who's counting on 911 to protect them. Over 4 days in January, we tracked medical emergencies in Chicago to see if 911 operators were giving out pre-arrival instructions.
How many of these pills did you take?
In one case, a report of an allergic reaction to medication, everything went by the book.
They stayed on the line with me and made sure everything was okay until they got here.
But as we followed more cases, from heart attacks to babies with seizures, almost no one said they'd gotten medical help over the phone.
They just told me that the ambulance would be there in a few minutes.
It's a pattern we saw over and over.
No, I don't know anything about CPR. Nobody give me no directions.
They didn't tell you nothing over the phone.
In 13 of the 15 cases we followed, no pre-arrival instructions were given. But when the Chicago Fire Department reviewed our cases, they had a different spin.
In all cases, the pre-arrival instruction, look for the ambulance, was given.
Other than saying, look for the ambulance, there was a cardiac emergency here. No pre-arrival instructions. There was a baby with a seizure. No pre-arrival instructions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain that?
I can't explain it.
They just didn't care.
I mean, you're saying that about dispatchers here in the city of Chicago.
They just didn't care about giving pre-arrival instructions.
Too much trouble.
Too much trouble. It's easier to get them off the phone.
Did he appear to have any kind of weapons or anything like that in his hands?
But problems go beyond individual operators to bigger issues of just how well a community has set up its 911 system. Some places do it right. Dispatchers in Delaware County, Pennsylvania are drilled in simulations, testing their responses.
I want him out of my house right now.
Is he there now?
Yeah, he's here right now.
You have any weapons? Does he have any weapons?
He ain't got no weapons, but I might have a weapon.
Training is so rigorous that 2 out of 3 applicants drop out. But while Delaware County trains dispatchers for at least 6 months, across the river in Philadelphia, until recently, 911 operators got only 2 weeks of training. And as we'll show you, that lack of training left dispatchers there ill-equipped late last year to handle a life-and-death crisis.
It was a baptism by fire.
That's how Nicole Burton describes her training to be a Philadelphia police dispatcher. 1 week in a classroom, 1 more at the 911 center, watching dispatchers take calls. So 2 weeks in, you're on the job.
Right.
You make it sound like you don't think that was enough training.
You're trusting somebody to save lives, and, you need more.
2 years ago, a citizens group warned that more training was needed because dispatchers were often rude and abrasive, and some 911 calls were being ignored. All the 911 problems came to a head one night last November when a gang of teenagers started roaming through northeast Philadelphia. Bill Donnelly was working late.
And I see a gang of kids busting up with baseball bats, windows of the cars behind us here. And the way they were going at it, I knew someone was going to get seriously hurt.
He called 911.
Can you send some police over here? About 50 kids are busting up cars.
Teenagers?
Yep.
All righty.
Police radio.
You got it damn right.
Over 40 minutes, there were 18 calls about the roving mob. But they fell through another crack in Philadelphia's 911 system. The calls were taken by 11 different dispatchers. No one put together that they were all describing the same near riot in one small neighborhood. In fact, some dispatchers were rude to callers.
There's a kid hurt out there.
All right. Was that it?
No, that's it. Send the police car to send... Wait a minute. I have the information. You can hang up now.
Eventually, on the steps of this church, the gang turned on a 16-year-old high school senior named Eddie Pollock. 5 minutes before he was fatally beaten, this call came into 911.
Police 244.
There seems to be a lot of gang fighting out front of my house. A lot of screaming, yelling, kids are carrying, it looks like clubs of some kind.
I'll send someone out.
But the 911 operator gave the call a low priority, just above a complaint of loud music. No police were sent. Who was that 911 operator? Nicole Burton.
Was there anything else different that I could have done? I know the answer in my case is no.
Your conscience is clear.
It is.
Burton says the noisy 911 room and a bad headset kept her from hearing the word clubs. So she gave the call priority 3, a fight on a highway. This caller says a lot to you. Gangs fighting in the street, screaming, yelling. I mean, it seems to me there are all kinds of questions that would have come from that phone call, and you didn't ask any of them.
It doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 3,000 people. If all you say is that they're fighting, it is still considered a fight on the highway.
But Ms. Burton, it does matter whether it's 2 people or 3,000.
I would agree with you, common sense, yes. But the policy of the Philadelphia Police Department did not agree.
Burton says the practice in the 911 center was not to ask questions, because that only encouraged callers to exaggerate their situation. The city denies that, but acknowledges the night Eddie Pollock was killed, few questions were asked. After the tragic killing, the city increased training from 2 weeks to 6. 3 dispatchers were fired for rudeness, and 3, including Nicole Burton, were transferred out. But all that came too late for Eddie Pollock's father, who remembers all the warnings about Philadelphia's emergency system.
What we're facing right now is the fact that the city knew that the 911 system was ineffective before Eddie was murdered.
911 is a lifeline, but one you can't always count on. Whether it's a little girl in Florida, a minister in Chicago, or a teenager in Philadelphia, when the dispatcher says help is on the way, is it really?
Please help me, I'm gonna die. I'm stuck in the fire, 20th floor. Somebody's gotta find me before I die.
Okay.
I can't breathe, I'm gonna pass out.
All right, we'll send an ambulance.
Hurry.